Small Business Tips Show, episode 19. Welcome to the Business Tips Show. My name is Frank Thomas, and with me I have Nancy Boisvert. We've got a really great show for you this week. If you're just starting out and you've not been an entrepreneur as of yet, this is the show for you, so stay tuned. So Nancy, tell me, how was your week in business today?
Well, this has been a bit of a weird week, Frank. It's been a bit of a mixed bag, a little bit up and a little bit down. I think it's timing. I think a lot of clients are doing a lot of review right now, and so it's been a little bit up and a little bit down. But overall, I guess on balance, it's been pretty good. How about you?
Oh, about the same. It's been we're still in the middle of our first real public launch of our product, and we've had some definite successes, some definite failures. It's really a continuous learning process no matter how you look at it. So that's excellent. And this is what kind of motivated us into talking about this show this week. We were talking 3 or 4 days ago, and we were talking about a friend that you have, and we're not going to mention any names, of course, but we all have friends like this. And sometimes those friends are inside of our eyeballs and not outside of our eyeballs, too. So I'll be the first one to say I'm guilty of it. Is the fact that we have a really hard time starting out. We have a really hard time putting pedal to the metal and start making things happen. You know, what has your experiences been like?
Well, I think it's not just we all know somebody like that. I think we have all worn those shoes at one point or another in our lives, and I think we continue to, and we have to learn to recognize and identify when that happens, and learn to take that big step forward and move on with things.
Right. It's interesting because there seems to be really two major games going on at any one time when we're trying to step out and do a new thing. I call it the inside game and then the outside game. The inside game, of course, is us. It's the baggage that we carry that is Frank, that is Nancy, that is
the madness of our minds.
It's the madness of our minds, absolutely, and we have to work with that. That's what we have to work with when we start out. And sometimes it can be extremely difficult. Sometimes it can be very daunting because of the fact that we have this inside game that we will encounter, and it's our fears, our doubts, our arrogance. It's all those emotions. But then you have the outside game, which is things that are just going to happen. For a good example, in the middle of a public launch, and one of our major payment vendors decide to lock my account, and I stop getting sales abruptly for almost 24 hours, and I have to hammer this out. And it just was them covering their behinds, and that we're having a very successful launch, and they're afraid that maybe we're laundering money or something like that. I don't know for sure, but at the end of the day, it came down to that I had to go through and remedy, and it was good though, because it allowed me to realize that I had a problem in my business. And now I'll tell you something. It was interesting, Nancy. I haven't even told you about this. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who's a like entrepreneur like myself in the software industry, selling online, much like we are. And I said, "Have you ever had this happen?" And he goes, "Oh, I got a story for you." They were into a $50,000 day, and exactly the same thing happened. And he was like, "You know something? It just happens, and you have to work your way through it." And he says, "It's easy to make you want to throw the towel in right away." And I said to him, "You are so right." But there's that outside game trying to make us throw the towel in. There's that inside game that I find the inside game is more insidious in the fact that it's not like, you can see something and you can overcome it. It's attacking you from behind.
Well, that particular example that you just gave of part of the outside game actually had an impact on your inside game. Like you say, it made you want to throw in the towel. And I understand that because it at first appears as though it is something from outside of your control, although you can remedy that, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But beyond that, it attacks you because it does shut you down, and it it makes you wonder about the impact on your credibility out there. Like you say, you're just fresh into this launch, and suddenly people are trying to purchase your product and can't. And do they think that this is a scam at that point, or are they going to come back, or just how does that impact you?
Absolutely. That's one thing that came to my mind almost immediately. I have these partners that are working with me to bring customers to the table, and they're looking at me going, what's going on? And of course, in my mind, I'm reading a lot more into it more than likely because they've probably been down this road and they understand the hassles that I'm encountering. But still, it still impacts you. It still messes you up. I was messed up for the rest of the day. But
Yeah.
I had to make the resolved decision that, okay, so shame on me for allowing myself to get caught with my pants down in this area. Now, how do I get beyond this? How do I was fortunately able to resolve the issue, at least in the short term. But now that I'm building a plan to ensure that it doesn't happen again by having multiple payment vendors and ensuring that my business really does look like a real business, so to speak.
Right. So it's about finding solutions instead of being beaten down.
Exactly. Now, I want you guys to know that this really is the first part. We're going to be tearing this one apart. This is the first time on the show that we're going to be taking a concept and really dicing it up and really, making that tossed salad of the ideas here. We're going to kind of skim through a lot of the big high points. And the real big high point, the real big takeaway in the front here is, of course, the inside and outside game, of course. But we're going to get into the multiple areas, and we're going to skim in this show through those multiple areas, or you'd be here for 2 hours. And we're going to spend some time in the next 3 or 4 shows going through each one of those in a little more detail. That way you have a clear, concise understanding that will help you build a business. Because, Nancy, it's our desire that you, as a listener, are able to take a concept, an idea, and bring it into a place of success in your business.
Yeah, exactly. Want to help people when we can and where we can to avoid some of the pitfalls that we've all experienced.
Mm-hmm. And trust me, and Nancy, you'll back me up on this. There is more pitfalls at times than you can shake a stick at, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, I guess you're not an entrepreneur if you haven't thought at least a couple times through a week. Maybe I should just throw in the towel and try something else. It would be easier, but at the end of the day, stop and think, why are you an entrepreneur? Should you be an entrepreneur? And what are the pros and the cons? And if you truly want the life of an entrepreneur, you're going to eventually shrug it off, get back up, and get back into the game.
Mm-hmm. It's not unusual as an entrepreneur. Like a lot of people who try entrepreneurship, or let's just say they try to start their own business or their own idea. Right. To make it sound even simpler, let's just keep it simple here. They have a good idea, they bring it into fruition, they start making money at it, and they encounter a problem. A lot of people will burn that right then and there. Oh, I can't do this. This is impossible. And, and they give up.
Yeah.
I find that it takes a person, it's almost like and now we can get stuck on 2 paths here. One is you try something, you get it going, and it blows up in your face, and you go, well, I didn't really want to do that anyhow. And then you try something else, and then you get a little further, and then you try. But what's happening is, and what's the trick here is, you're continuing to grow, you're continuing to get further down the road. I was actually reading a statistic that all major entrepreneurs usually burn 1 or 2 businesses before they actually take off. And basically that means they make their mistakes in the first couple of businesses, and you never stop making mistakes, but you got to get to a place where you're willing to accept those mistakes and just continue.
And I think it's an important thing to note here that even though at some point probably almost everybody dreams of having their own business, not everybody is meant to or should have their own business. I mean, if everybody had their own business, we'd have no employees working anywhere else. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't mean that you're not a successful person, successful in quotes, in your own right, if you are an employee rather than an entrepreneur. And if you're unsure, you can always do what a lot of people do. Keep your paid job and start it off as a hobby.
Oh, I absolutely recommend that. And, we're going to be touching the hobby word later and in a different context. But in the beginning, absolutely. Try it out. Keep the cash flowing in your regular job. Hey, somebody's willing to pay you. Then take a little bit of your secondary time and start to develop your idea. That, to me, is the safest way to do things. I'm one of the crazy ones who said, "Oh, the heck with this," and I jumped out and just, I'm on my own, man. And it was a rough road. I'm not going to lie, but it's been a fruitful road because it brought me to this place where I'm doing very well now. And Nance, I know you've been business. How long have you been in business for yourself?
For the vast majority of everything since 1984. So yeah, other than probably a total of 3 years that I worked for somebody else. So yeah, there's been some ups and some downs. There's no question.
The bug hit you right away, did it?
Well, the bug hit me back in the 80s. We had a nice little recession, and I ended up losing my job due to not having a huge amount of seniority. And in a recession, you take what you can get. And I was frustrated. I wasn't satisfied in the job. I was getting paid next to nothing. It was almost costing me to go into this job. And I was young. I was, I don't know, 24, 25 years old. And I thought, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to make at least this much money just on my own. And so I quit the job. And like you, I just jumped in, maybe because I was naive at 24 or 25. And I just picked up the phone and, "Hi, do you want this done?" And I managed to pick up work and contracts. And like I say, there's been hills and valleys, but overall, I'm still doing it.
And that's a really important point you made right away is, and this is context for another show completely, is the fact that you picked up the phone and you started to get out there and make contact with other people. And a lot of people get stuck because they don't do that, and they wonder why they haven't got no business. But that's another show.
Yes.
So let's look at the major points here. There is room for growth here in this list. There's room for change. We might find as we build the shows that we will eventually start maybe changing this context up a little bit, or content up a little bit. But right now, what we have here is some major areas that we really came across. And one of them is paralysis by analysis. Another one is you need to get to a place, as we just stated, you can start your business as a hobby, but one day you have to decide your hobby becomes your business. And that's very important. Having a bad business idea or a bad business plan is another one, or having no plan is the third. The fourth is the fear of failure and success. Believe it or not, there's a fear of success. And those are the four major points that we have right now. Like I said, this could grow as we discuss it and we analyze it and pick it apart, but this is where we're going to be starting. So let's start looking at the fear of paralysis by analysis. This is, I think, one of the biggest problems startups have, or people who are trying to create a startup have.
Well, I think, Frank, that this is kind of where we started with our discussions about building this program out. Back to my friend, and we all have friends and we've all done it, continuing to not necessarily put up her own roadblocks, but yeah, putting up her own roadblocks, because rather than moving forward, she allows the situation that presents itself to cause her to just kind of shut down and try to change direction. So then she has to start all over again and run into the same problems.
Mm-hmm. And we'll manufacture problems all day long. If we don't want to get something done, we'll manufacture problems that don't exist. We'll create worries that will never happen. There are things, though, that we must learn. And I know that you went through a metamorphosis in your business over 2015. And some of the places where you could have went into paralysis by analysis was getting a better handle on the technical side of your business. I've always said that it's important for you, when you run a business, to know all the roles of your business. I didn't say you need to do all the roles of your business, but it's important for you to know all the roles.
I'm just going to jump in here, Frank, and say that although I don't completely disagree with you about doing the technology side, I got to say my biggest obstacle in 2015 was this camera. That was my biggest obstacle, is getting used to sitting in front of a camera.
And now
I
it's
hate
okay.
cameras. Well, now it's okay because I'm not looking at it like a camera. I'm looking at it as speaking to an audience, having a conversation. So I got past the fact that it's a camera, and I'm having a conversation now.
Very true. And it was interesting because one of the things, I know you had a speaking engagement about a month or so back now, and I had said to you before the speaking engagement that, oh, you're going to find that it's going to be so much easier for you to stand in front of a crowd. And you were like, oh, Frank, I've done that before. But you came back and said to me, it actually was easier.
Yep. Yeah, it was easier, first of all, because I hadn't spoken in front of a group for a while. But yeah, you just kind of, they had me there for a reason, right? They wanted to hear what I had to say. So let's just tell them what I have to say. Right. Not everybody is going to agree with me all the time, but that's okay.
But it's easy for us to get stuck in a paralysis by analysis. It's easy for us to, like we said earlier, to fabricate problems that really don't exist. You know, I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of, oh, I can't do that because. And normally what happens is, and you can always tell when you're in this situation, when you don't write anything down. Because when you start writing your problems down, you discover that A, you don't have a problem, or B, you can work through the problem. It's when you allow them to kind of float around inside the ether in your head or whatever, that it becomes a big problem. And usually it's the ones that keep you up in the middle of the night too, because when you're tired and it's nighttime, it becomes this monster, and it's enough to literally paralyze you. And it's important for us to kind of look at the trees and forest syndrome and make sure we don't see the forest all the time as a forest. Because if we look at, we look at getting from point A to point B, and that could be a big forest. But you have to say, okay, what tree can I work on today? What tree can I harvest today or cut down today in this forest? And what can I deal with today? And that's why God gives us day after day after day to work away at the problem one tree at a time, so to speak, like metaphorically.
Well, there's no way that you can do everything all at once. When you're making a big dinner, you have to take the roast, and you have to season it, and you have to peel the potatoes, and you have to do all those things individually. So why would you think that you can just jump into your business and poof, it's done?
That's a really great example, because there's a couple things at play there. One of them is, if you've created a few roasts and a few roast dinners, you don't really have to think about it. You already have a plan, and we're getting to the plan part here shortly. But and so what happens is you methodically start working through your plan. But when you don't have that plan, and that, like I said, this is why that's an important thing, your business idea or your plan, then you're going to have problems. Okay, so paralysis.
Before we leave that, Frank, I wanted to also point out about the paralysis by analysis. You made a very good comment there about making sure that you write down what your issues are, so that they're not just floating around in space, that you can contort and maneuver and forget some of them from time to time. But beyond that, another good indication that you are suffering from paralysis by analysis is if you're doing busy work.
Mm-hmm.
You're spending all day doing stuff so that you can say, well, look at how much work I've done today, but you've really accomplished nothing towards going to your goals.
I know Timothy Ferriss, the author of the 4-Hour Workweek, talks extensively about this. And when I when I first got his book, it was an audiobook, and I was driving my car to work and listening to his book, and I'm listening, and he got to this part, and I was like, oh man, I do a lot of busy work. Oh my goodness.
I think we all do.
Absolutely. It's amazing how we'll get stuck. As a programmer, I said to my partner one day, I said, I could probably knock out 3 really good programs if I can actually stick to that computer and do 8 hours of solid programming for a whole week, like 8 hours every day. Mm-hmm. Because I'm guilty of it. I'll work for a little while, and then I'll all of a sudden, cat videos. I need a distraction.
Well, and not to point fingers of blame or anything, but our corporate culture almost teaches that. I know before the recession in the 80s, I worked for a major bank here. And if you were done your work, you were actually told in so many words and not so many words, well, just go look busy.
Mm-hmm. You're right, because what happened was, the last business I worked for, I worked as a chief information officer. And when I first started, it was a smaller, it was a fairly big organization, but the actual organizational structure was very lean. And I actually was the IT guy in the beginning. But they hired me on with the whole idea that I would build a team and bring them into a much bigger envelope, because they were doing nothing with computers and they wanted to do everything with computers. So to give you some context. Now, what happened was, in the beginning, I was always busy. Every day, I had something that had to get done. So I actually found the days to be exciting, to be interesting, to be, you felt at the end of the day satisfied that you got something done, because everything you did was important, and you really didn't have time to waste. You didn't have time to contemplate and to build a forest where there was none. You just, you had to have your nose to the grindstone, and we got a lot done. We were very lean. But over the years I worked there, I worked there for 5 or 6 years or 7 years, and as I was working there, the organization grew and grew from a technology standpoint. It grew from technology as well as from people. And we got to this place where I dreaded going to work, because if I didn't have enough busy work of my own, people would find busy work for me to do.
Yeah. Yep.
There was one time that, because I had to work with the accountants quite a bit, because I had a lot of cost spending. I was spending millions of dollars every year, and I had to keep track of the spending and where it was going, and do analysis, depreciation, all those wonderful things. And the accountants would go over the same thing 10 times. And I would say to them eventually, something, the first 8 times, I've told you exactly the same thing. It's now becoming busy work. Are you bored? Do you need more to do? Because
here's my taxes.
Yeah, here's my taxes. Get them done. I appreciate it. And it literally came down to that. And I found that organizations will get into this place of busy work. And I actually will say that I think government has gotten into that place. Why is government so top heavy, for crying out loud? And that I believe there needs to be government in place. I believe there needs to be a riding power in place to govern our larger holding, which is our country. But I find that countries get into this place where the government becomes so top heavy that everybody.
That's a whole nother show too.
That's a whole nother show too. They're pushing paper around. So it's important for you to realize that there's that busy work, and we're kind of getting out there in space. But so let's draw things back here.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. The next point, after a paralysis by analysis, is the turning your hobby back into a business. It's okay in the beginning when you're first starting out. I did it. I was working as an IT guy, like a computer repair guy, fixing networks and servers, and I did it on the side. And it was a hobby. I used to charge like a minimal rate, much less than I should have charged, but I enjoyed doing it, and I enjoyed the extra pocket change at the time. It was really good. And it was all good, and it gave me experience. But something? Somebody once came to me and said, "You'll never, ever get beyond this if you don't stop treating your business like a hobby."
Exactly, yeah.
She looked into my business and cut right to the chase. And when she first told me, I was like, what are you talking about, But after a few weeks and a few months of meditating on that, I went, wow, you are so right. Whenever we turn our business back into a hobby, and what's a hobby? It's something you do when you got some free time. It's
when you feel like
it. Yeah, when the inspiration hits you. And when you're running a business, it's not like that. You're going to get up some mornings and there's no inspiration, and you still have to get your nose to the grindstone. And those are usually the most productive days, for crying out loud. Nancy, jump in here. I'm getting stuck. What have you encountered when it comes to this concept of turning your business from being a hobby back to a business?
I think that I do think that's the biggest pitfall is that if people get up and they don't feel like it that day and they don't do it, they're doing themselves a big disservice. They're keeping their business from potential success. It's like, most people, whether they can sing or not, like to sing now and again. It makes us feel happy. And some people, at some point in their lives might think, gee, that person's really lucky. They're a famous singer and they get to sing every day and they travel around. I imagine that there are times when that singer gets up and does not feel like standing up and singing that song for the 147,000th time in front of a group of people. But they have to do it, and they have to smile, and they have to believe it, and they have to carry it to the audience. Same thing in your business. You can't just get up and say, well, you can. If you have your own business, you can. You can get up and say, you know what, I want to go for a hike in the mountains today. So you get up and you go for that hike. But you know that at the end of the day, when you come back from that hike, you have to make up for that time.
And another interesting point you bring out here is the fact that it is all about that repetition note too, and that's what gets boring. I know that I've given probably 6 or 7 webinars in the last week over my product and talked about the product and what it's about and all that stuff. And you know something? It gets pretty dry after a while. But another thing happens. I get really good at presenting it.
Oh gosh, Frank, when I was in my political incarnation in the early 90s, I followed, federal leaders around from pillar to post and different candidates around from pillar to post. And I heard exactly the same speeches with the exact same pauses at the exact same places to wait for applause or for laughter or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is by rote.
That's when you start getting good at your business. That's when you start, even when I'm programming and I'm looking at the code, I'm like, oh, I got to look at this code again. But all of a sudden, it gets better and it gets better and it gets better. And we have to understand that. It's important for all of us to understand that we don't really become strong experts in any field until we've beaten it around for about 10 years, literally.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's important to, in your mind, and this is really an internal thing, this is a mind thing. You need to get your mind to the place where you stop thinking about your business as something fun to do and you start thinking about it as a serious endeavor. And that includes all the tasks that must be completed, including taxation, payroll. I was terrible at payroll at one time, and you know something? The government, boy, they don't take no for an answer, and they penalize you very, very hard. And I found that out the hard way. So now my payroll gets done on a continuous basis, and I'm actually grateful because I know that I know somebody else whom didn't take their payroll seriously, and they had a huge tax bill at the end of the year and no money to show for it.
Yeah.
I'd rather pay it as we go.
Yeah, rather than looking under rocks and taking back pop bottles.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Okay.
Yeah.
Business plan, business idea. Wow. How many stories, Nancy, can you give me when it comes to somebody whom has a business or wants to start a business and their plan is to get up in the morning and just become super successful?
Oh, I think everybody has had that thought. Even, once upon a time, I thought, well, like I said, I can do this, and I was successful in making as much money as I had initially thought, but it was a lot of work. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of work. So yeah, I think that it's when you have an idea and you have a belief and you have the confidence, you don't want to have the rug pulled out from under your feet on that. It's important that you have that self-confidence. But you also have to have realistic expectations.
Very true. And it's interesting because, when you're developing a product or you're developing your business or your service, it is developing. It's not completing. It's developing. And you're always, every day, you're making minute adjustments to how you provide your service, your business, your pricing, or whatever it is. And you discover where that sweet spot is for your business. Or
tweaking along the way.
Is there a sweet spot?
Yeah.
Is there? And this brings me to another point. If you're developing an idea and a plan, I say that, at times when I'm developing a new idea, I can start programming, and I can really use this idea of programming very well. Let's say, Nancy, you come to me and say, oh, it'd be so cool if we had a program that could turn our screens green.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a very simple example. But when you have a more complex example, I would say, oh, that's pretty cool. That's a good idea. And what I do is I crack open my development platform and I start coding. And,
Right.
I'm guilty of this. I haven't thought it through. I try to start from the beginning to get to the end, because we all start the journey from the first step to the last step. But when you're building a plan for a business, for a program, for a product, for your business in general, you start from the end and work back to the beginning. Your plan is to develop the path that you're going to walk before you walk the path. And if you don't have a good idea of where your business plan is, now I'm not saying you need to go out and think 10 years ahead. It's actually not a bad idea, but I'm saying that's not what you want to do. What's your end game? I approached a customer one time and said to this customer, I said, customer, you're doing all these wonderful things. What's your end game? And she said to me that I want to sell this business in 2 years, and this is what I want to sell it for. Oh, okay, that looks very different than you just falling in love with this and doing these things. So now I know how I can help you build your business plan. And what I would do is I would look at her end game and work backwards to, okay, today. So building that business idea, and I'm just going to kind of really touch the high points here, is looking at, let's say, okay, I'm going to use, Nancy, my software business as an example, because it's the forefront of my mind. I want to develop between 5 and 10 strong products that we continue to evolve, that we continue to develop, that all fit well together, that all work together, so the customer could have one product or all 10, and we provide those products to the customer either on a one-time payment basis or a monthly subscription basis. I can see when we get to a point where we have enough products, it makes sense to have a monthly subscription basis, and it's better for my business in the long run because it's continuous payments over time. And what we do is we just continue to develop that. I might consider selling the business at that point to somebody larger whom can take the business to the next level or not. I'm not sure about that yet. So what does that mean? That means that I need to think of, okay, how often do I put out new pieces of software? How much am I selling?
What's the time frame that you want to develop this?
What's the time frame? What's a realistic time frame? What are some ideas that I can put on the table for these pieces of software?
What do people want?
What do people want? Who do I need to bring in? And these are all the questions I'll be asking myself. And I have a pen in my hand and I have a pad. The pad is the business entrepreneur's savior. And I write everything down. And I write it down, and I write it down, and I write it down, and I don't care what I write down. I just care that I write something down. And sometimes the ideas are trash, and they into the trash bin, the recycling bin. Some ideas, though, stick. It's like throwing the spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks.
But you're doing it in the planning stage instead of once you're just trying to run with it and throwing money away. It's
better to pack your parachute. I've heard so many they came out in the 90s like crazy, the 80s and 90s, pack your parachute as you're falling out of the sky.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, pack your parachute before you start falling out of the sky. You're going to have enough problems as you're falling out of the sky as it is. The ripcord's going to snap and you're going to have to go to your secondary chute, There's enough problems already. Why create more problems? Why create more reasons for failure? So you need to have that solid business plan in place. And can I course correct? Absolutely. I've already done that a few times. But as time goes on and we course correct and we make new plans, a couple things happen. First of all, it becomes clearer and clearer, and the plan becomes less of an idea and more of a reality as time goes on.
Well, I think it's important that people understand that a business plan isn't written in stone, that it is a living document, and it does need to be tweaked and honed along the way.
And that's important, but it's ultimately important to have a plan. And another thing, too, is when you're developing a product or service, why did you start developing it in the first place? Never lose, and that's part of your plan.
Yeah.
For example, my first piece of software, its cornerstone feature is XYZ. And I have to make sure whenever I add something to it that it fits with that cornerstone
plan. That it
plan.
supports that. Yeah.
It supports that. If it doesn't, it might be a completely different product. And
It's about building a foundation.
I actually have been talking to somebody pretty extensively who has gone down the same path, and he's been developing his own products for some time. And he's the first person to say is, Frank, you're so smart because you're not trying to put everything into one piece of software. I said, exactly. Put it into multiple pieces of software. First of all, nobody was going to want to spend $1,000 to get the feature that they want when they can spend $100 and just get it.
Right.
And second, it reduces the complexity of any one component.
And not only that, but it taps into the needs of a potential larger audience. For instance, I'm using your software product right now, but features that somebody else wants within that software are much more than what I need or want for my purposes.
Hence, why there's going to be 2 versions of the software for sure, maybe even 3.
Right. So why should I pay, not why would I, but why should I pay for features that I'll never use, never understand, never go to?
Well, that allows you to, and and this is part of your plan as well, as knowing who your customer is.
Exactly.
The standard version of the product is for one customer, and the professional version really is for another customer.
Precisely.
And already we're watching the cream, come out of the milk, and we see this other customer base who want the pro product, and they're willing to pay whatever to get those features. So, but it's only like 10 or 15 or 20% of who purchase. It's not all 100%. So that says something right there.
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
So you need that firm business idea. And that firm business idea floats back into treating your business more like a business and less like a hobby. And also it helps you with the paralysis by analysis stage as well. Because again, you're writing things down. Finally, the fear of failure and success. It sounds crazy. Nancy, are you afraid to be successful?
Well, I'm not. I bring it on. But I know that there are a lot of people that are, because people start to identify. I mean, we're going to get into the little psychological stuff here. People start to identify their persona in a certain way, or through baggage from their upbringing or their experiences in life. They start to think that they are worth a certain, or they fit in a certain category. And if you start to be successful, you have to leave some things behind and gain other things. And some people are afraid to make that move. It's the unknown.
I totally agree with you. I think though too is I think that the fear of failure is predominant. People don't like to fail. That's an easy one.
Yeah, they don't start so that they never fail.
Yeah, it hurts to have that course correction. And like you said, sometimes it hurts to have to take away things out of your life, out of your business, out of your situation that are holding you back or hurting your business. I've had to do that. Like one thing I had to do to develop my software more was to start firing some customers. And that sounds crazy, but they don't fit into my business plan anymore. And there's a few that I'm still holding on to, but I can see getting to a place where I say goodbye to the rest of them, because I have to do this business wholly. If I want to treat it like a real business and not like a hobby, I got to take it on 100%. And I've already ditched some high-profile clients because of the fact that I want to do this. This is what I want to do, and I have my reasons for that.
And that's where your focus needs to be.
Right. Now, but the fear of success, in my opinion, is very insidious in the fact that we all think, oh, yeah, bring it on, baby. Yeah, that'd be great. But I tell you something. When we started launching the product and the sales started coming in, I was like, and it's crazy. It's crazy. And, we were selling the product initially at $67. And somebody said to us, that's too low. And
I'm not worthy.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Nancy. I'm not worthy. And I think
we all do that too, Frank. I know that there are many, many, many instances that I undervalue my services.
Well, we had one person come to us and said, you should be selling this product for $1,000. And I went, whoa. Even there, I'm like, like the old, again. But, we're selling the product at $147, and it sells like gangbusters.
Yeah.
That says to me that we might have hit the right price point. I feel that if it hits under $97, then we're really kind of cutting the serious from the window shoppers.
Right.
Because not everybody licenses the software. We can see when people license it and how many licenses they're using. And still a majority don't license the software, so we still have a lot of SOSs. I call them shiny object syndrome people, where they just, nothing against them, they're my customers. But they'll purchase but never use the product. And it blows my mind, but there you have it. But we need, as a business, we unfortunately do need those customers as well to make the initial business thrive. Now, the pro version, which is going to be coming out here, everybody's chomping at the bit for me to have it out a month ago, but I'm hoping to have it out in the next few weeks. They've made mention that this should be a $300, $400, $500 product because it fits a very specific niche and it provides a service where nobody else is providing it. And I agree, but even then I'm like this. I'm like, oh my goodness. And it's that fear of success again. It's the fear of, oh, if I do that, then nobody's going to buy it. And I don't know until I try.
Mm-hmm.
I am hammering out the price details for the pro version with my partner. And even both of us were like, wow. Wow. When this guy came back and said, you should be charged $1,000 and not $147. I'm like, you're crazy, man.
It's interesting.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's interesting to me that you see the struggle with finding the right price point, or feeling that, is my pricing worth this? I find it interesting that you see that as a fear of success, because me personally, I don't see that in that same category. I see it as maybe not worthy of that price point. But speaking for myself, it's more about, like you had said, will people see the value and pay that much money? I don't want to price myself out of the market. So it's in my case, it's not a fear of, or in my opinion, I don't see that as a fear of success. I see it more of a fear of missing out, a fear of maybe back into the fear of failure because you haven't priced it appropriately.
I think, though, too, there's a lot more going on that I'm not really talking about. One of the things is I'm seeing the overall sales figures. I'm seeing them up here. I'm like, whoa, I hoped for more, but even this is just blowing my mind. I was like, oh, my goodness. I didn't think that we'd sell that many copies, but I have encountered that fear of success on many occasions.
Yes, as have I.
Where success catches you and whisks you along, and it causes you to shrink back, causes you to go, oh, I don't know about this. But we have to realize that that again, it's still fear, and regardless of what it is, the overriding fact is we must look through the fear. I once read something, and I'm trying to get the exact wording, so forgive me if it's not right. Fear is there not to stop us, but to show us that we can walk through it and get to the other side of it. Because it's kind of funny, when we look at fear from behind and not in front, it's not very scary anymore. It's like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Or, wow, that was a struggle, but hey, I could do that again. It's interesting how that works, eh?
Well, and having an appropriate support group, support network, appropriate mentor for you who will keep encouraging you and help get you past those fears. Because I found that, especially in this past year, when I've been transitioning and honing my business and focusing in a specific area that was part of the whole prior to this year, but now I'm focusing on it. And with that and some good mentorship and some good support, I'm leaving a lot of those fears in the dust now.
I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes to that, and I think we're going to open that box up when we get to the fears and that show that mentorship, A1 important. I totally agree with you. And Nancy, I am thankful, and I'll publicly say this, I'm thankful for the kicks in the butt that I have gotten from you over the 2015. Plain and simple.
They've been very positively reciprocal.
Okay, so there you have it. Those are our 4 big points. Like I said, we could morph into more things as time goes on, but we really want to give you folks an idea of what is out there, what is going to thwart you from being successful in your business, from being an entrepreneur, and we want to kind of help you get through those things. So make sure you listen to future shows. But
this is the jumpstart.
This is a jumpstart. This is the beginning of tomorrow. I want to say to you that today is the beginning of tomorrow for you. And if you've not been successful yet, or you've been thinking about taking that first step, now is the time. Don't let the economic situation, I could say, oh, the economic situation's terrible and nobody's going to buy my software, and it could have been dead in the water in October, but it's not. It's actually doing very, very well. It's doing better than any other part of my business. So go figure.
I started in '84 during a recession.
And you did well. You're still living. You're still kicking. You're still making money. You're still having your business.
Yep.
And that's what's important. Any final thoughts on the forefront there, Nancy?
I just think that this is such an interesting topic to me, and there's so many nuances and so many undercurrents in starting your own business. I'm really excited about evolving this series.
Oh, me too. So remember, guys, that we do have that outside game, that inside game. We're going to get a lot deeper in further shows coming down the road here, so make sure you stay tuned. Nancy, if we want to find you on the web and get help with our marketing issues, where do we find you?
You can find my website at www.agapimarketing.com, and Agapi is spelled AGAPI.
Oh, excellent. And make sure that you do stop by the Small Business Tips Show website. I have a free gift for you called Making Your Passions Your Purpose. It's something you need to read. It is a short document, but it's a great document. It gets you onto our mailing list so I can give you notifications of future shows and great things that I think that come by my way that could help your business. That's at smallbusinesstipshow.com, smallbusinesstipshow.com, and stop by. And I'm sitting here thinking about this. I should know the URL of my own website. Could be the Small Business Tip Show. I'll make sure that at the bottom you'll see the exact URL as I do in every show. Thank you very much. Nancy, thank you for your input this week.
Thanks very much. Looking forward to the next one.
Absolutely. Guys, I look forward to getting deeper into how to start your new business. Thank you very much.